All right, hi everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm here with my fellow educators, Christine, Freedom, Brianna, and Lindsay. And today we're taking a deep dive into something we keep encountering in professional development, as well as more frequently in the classroom, and that is the power of student and family voice.
Yes, and when we talk about student or family voices, we're really just talking about giving space for students and their families to be heard, to collaborate with educators, and to change what learning looks feels like in the classroom.
And that's huge, especially for students who've been left out or underserved in the education system. We're talking about those historically pushed to the margins from pre K all the way to grade 12.
For sure, Freedom. And since COVID-19, a lot of students are still catching up, and not just academically, but socially too. After years of communicating in an online world, it can be tricky to realign with in-person norms. And with advances in digital tools, this gap continues to grow. So many learners are feeling disconnected and not connected to school and their peers altogether.
Yeah, and that's when student and family voices can really come in strong. It's not just about participation, it's about building culturally responsive spaces where students feel seen, heard, and a part of a community.
A lot of the strategies we're sharing today are drawn from a remix of really helpful infographic from the REL Pacific. We have adapted their work to better reflect the needs of diverse Canadian classrooms, including Indigenous and newcomer communities. The original version is publicly available online if folks want to check it out.
So today we're going to unpack what that actually looks like, the challenges, the wins, and how educators can keep that connection alive and authentically integrate this voice into the classroom.
I want to take a minute and talk about underserved students, like the ones with accessibility challenges. This was Lexis Demeyer's concern at a BC school in Abbotsford, British Columbia. Not only were her accessibility concerns dismissed by the school administration, but her artwork and speech were censored by her school as well. Let's further explore the story.
I'm interested to see this.
Mm-hmm.
The school district censoring a student's art project. But that is exactly what happened in Abbotsford after a grade 12 student used a final project to speak out on accessibility challenges she faced at her own school. But as CTV Shannon Patterson reports, she was silenced.
So it depicts a person in a wheelchair looking up at their classroom and having an inability to access it.
This painting was part of Lexis Demeyer's final project for her art activism class at Robert Bateman Secondary School. She also explored accessibility challenges for people with disabilities in her community of Abbotsford.
I present that project, I think, on the Monday, and then on the Wednesday of that week, I break my ankle.
Now on crutches, she discovered her school didn't have functioning automatic door.
And I don't have any hands to open the door at all, so I needed help to get in.
There were only a handful of elevator keys, and she didn't always get one.
And then my teacher was like, why don't you write a letter to the principal about this? Because nobody did that as a part of our project. I was like, oh, absolutely, I will.
Demeyer says the principal told her the school was up to code.
I felt super dismissed.
So in her artist statement that accompanies her painting, she wrote about her struggle to get around while she was on crutches at Robert Bateman Secondary.
They say that the school district runs on student voice and agency. I say that I hope they hear my voice and that they help fix the problems at Bateman.
But just hours before she was set to present her painting and artist statement,
my teacher pulls me aside into the side room and tells me that she had to change my artist statement or the administration wouldn't let her hand out the rest of the books that contained everybody's artist statement.
Demeyer's original statement in that book was covered with a sticker, her words replaced. She was also told she had to remove any reference to her personal accessibility issues at school in her art show speech.
Because they couldn't include anything that was like demeaning or bad mouthing or making anything that would make the school look bad.
After first telling her story to a reporter at the Fraser Valley Current,
lots of people have come and support me. I've gotten lots of text messages.
And today, an admission from the superintendent of the Abbotsford School District, who said in a statement, "We are investigating the circumstances surrounding the censorship of Ms. Demeyer's speech. We understand this action may have silenced an important student voice and caused frustration. The school board chair is also committing to fix accessibility issues at Bateman." What do you hope the school district and the school learns from this?
Not to silence their students' voices, and when problems are raised, that just because there is an issue with your school, that doesn't mean you have to cover it up and hide it.
DeMeyer graduated from high school on Monday, and what happened in her final weeks only confirmed her future plans. Lexis wants to be a lawyer. Shannon Patterson, CTV News, Abbotsford.
This story demonstrates the importance of students' voice, as well as a Power Universal Design framework. Educators and researchers have identified that when incorporating students' voice in schools, there are many benefits, such as strengthening students' social, emotional, and academic abilities, improving and addressing educational inequities. This framework encourages students to view students not just as participants, but as active leaders in shaping education.
That was definitely a very powerful story, Christine. One that is important to share and brings us to what we actually mean when we say student voice and family voice. It's more than just hearing from students once in a while. It's about giving students and their families real opportunities to influence what learning in the classroom looks like and what the classroom looks like. And you can provide these opportunities before the learning even begins. In my kindergarten class, we typically ask families to fill out a survey in order to have their voices amplified and plan based on their lived experiences. Not only does this reflect the community accurately, but it also allows educators to build connections from the start.
Exactly, Andrea. And educators like Caroline Roberts remind us that that's meaningful inclusion, especially for Indigenous students and other marginalized groups. Requires us to rethink power structures in education. She encourages educators to create spaces where students are not only seen and heard, but are active participants in shaping what happens in the classroom. That kind of transformation helps prevent the silencing, like Lexis experience. That connection can happen in a bunch of different ways. It might be indirect, like giving feedback on how the lesson went, or it could be directly building what the lesson looks like in a co-created lesson plan.
Yeah, exactly. Teachers can bring in student and family voices across a lot of areas, especially by inviting members of the community into the classroom to share personal experiences. They can also collaborate on things such as planning lessons, how they teach, and even how the classroom is managed day to day, and what the physical environment looks like. This would have been pivotal to Lexis's story.
I cannot agree more. Co-creating activities together and even having families implement the lessons either in person or virtually using digital tools would be a great way to build connections between school and home as well.
And here's the thing, for any of this to work, teachers really need to create safe spaces where students and families can feel respected. People really need to understand why their voices matter and that what they say will actually make a difference. This is why what happened to Lexis should be a lesson to all of us. Educators really need to follow through.
Absolutely. And everyone should get a chance to share their voice in a way that works for them. That's why working together is so important.
Because when we really support students and families in sharing their stories and perspectives, educators get a much better picture of who their students are, where they're coming from, and how to meet their needs.
Exactly. And it also helps educators to experience the different cultures, experiences, and realities that shape how kids learn.
And ultimately, that's what makes us better educators. So, in the next part of the episode, we'll look into how this plays out in real world situations. So, let's talk about what it really means to create culturally responsive classrooms, especially here in Canada, where our classrooms are incredibly diverse and include Indigenous, newcomer, and multicultural communities.
There's lots of buzzwords in teaching, but culture responsive pedagogy should not be one of them. As educators, we need to ensure that the way we teach actually reflects the lived realities of our learner. It's about embedding these histories, ways of knowing, and ways of learning into our teaching practices.
And that means teachers need to start by looking inward. It's important to explore our own cultural backgrounds and intersectionalities. We also need to check our assumptions and be honest about the unconscious biases we might carry, especially when it comes to how we view other cultures.
Definitely. And that also means doing the work to learn about the communities we're teaching in, like Indigenous cultures, languages, stories, and protocols included, not as just a side note, but as a foundation for how we build relationships and structure learning.
Exactly. And when we understand where our students come from, their cultural roots, their family dynamics, even how they engage with knowledge, This is when we can actually start to teach in ways that connect rather than just deliver the content.
And that's where students' voice and family voices really come in. There's not just tools, they're bridges. By listening deeply to students and families, teachers gain insight into how students learn, what matters to them, and how to honor that in the classroom.
In Indigenous communities, for example, learning is often relational and intergenerational. So when we invite in a family voice, we're also respecting a traditional way of knowing, one where learning is collective and rooted in story, land, and lived experience.
So
Mhm.
no matter where you teach, culturally responsive teaching starts with listening, learning, and making space for voices that have often been left out of the conversation.
So true. And when we get that right, schools become more than just a place to get through. It becomes a space of belonging, a place of respect, and shared growth.
So coming up, we'll share some real examples of what this looks like in practice and how teachers are weaving student and family voice into the everyday fabric of their classrooms.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrea. So let's take a closer look to how teachers can intentionally include student voice in their classrooms. It's all about creating a space where students feel heard, valued, and like they truly belong, not just occasionally, but every single day. And what's really powerful, students don't have to be older to start participating in these important conversations. Even younger learners can offer meaningful insights. We just have to give them the right opportunities and support.
Totally. Around age 9, so like around grade 3 or 4, kids actually start developing a sense of independence from adults. That's when you can start involving them more directly in conversations and how they learn best. My 9-year old constantly likes to help make decisions in our household.
Same. That independence is growing fast, but I do want to foster it positively by showing her that her opinion matters. So before that age, though, it's more about guiding them. Things like modeling certain behaviors or even bringing in family input can really help younger students feel supported.
That's right. And once they're ready, it's all about creating opportunities for them to speak up, whether it's in person or even in virtual settings. There are so many simple and effective ways teachers can start inviting student voice early on. And we're going to get into those right now.
For sure. So building that confidence, it does start small, but it makes a huge difference.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's talk about what this actually looks like in the classroom, though. So how can teachers bring student voice into everyday learning?
I think one of the biggest starting points is creating a classroom culture that really respects and acknowledges all the students' experiences. Kids need to feel like who they are really matters. And when they do, I think they're more likely to speak up and get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Even simple ways to gather feedback, like quick check ins, sticky notes, exit tickets, or even online polls, can be such an easy and quick way to make space for students.
And then actually using that feedback, right?
Mhm.
Showing students that their input changes things and that we care about their wants and needs because that's what builds trust.
Exactly. And speaking from a student-centered strategy, project-based learning is a great example. So when students get to explore topics they care about and have a choice in what they learn, they're way more engaged. So same goes for community-centered strategies like place-based learning, an approach where learning is rooted in local culture, history, geography, and community issues. So, for example, students might learn about plants by exploring a nearby park and planting a small garden at school.
Good idea.
For sure, but like it's more than just a strategy. It's also a way to honor Indigenous ways of learning, which are deeply connected to land, relationships, and community. So when we center those ways of knowing, we move beyond inclusion as a checkbox and start to challenge the colonial assumptions that still shape a lot of our classrooms today.
Yeah, and sometimes students just need a model, right? Teachers can show what it looks like to speak up by sharing their thoughts, asking questions, and reflecting out loud. We want students to feel included, and we do this by encouraging them to share their voice.
For sure. And I think that another great strategy is co-creating lessons with students. So this means creating spaces where students can build their collaboration skills and see their own interests placed at the center of their learning. And I think that when this happens, you can really see the difference. Like students become a lot more engaged and they're deepening their connection to the content. And the best part of this is that it shows them that their ideas truly do matter and they are a meaningful part of the learning process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one of my favorite techniques that brings me so much joy in the classroom is facilitating your students to lead something like a community gathering. So maybe it's a transition in the school year or a help with the school fundraiser. Just by giving them a chance to take the lead and have ownership over their learning, you really show the students how much you value their voices.
Oh, totally. And I feel like all of these strategies that we're talking about send the same message, and it's that your voice matters here, which is really important.
Yeah. So now that we've covered that, let's narrow the conversation to practical student voice strategies for virtual learning. One of the first is creating an online discussion board that builds community and gives students a space to connect and engage.
Yes, it helps students build pure relationship that they might otherwise be lost online. And it gives quieter students that chance to express themselves in ways that suits them.
Another key strategy I found helpful is offering one-on-one check-ins. So video calls, phone calls, or messaging, whatever meets individual needs, what they prefer. And it can be optional for students.
Mhm.
I agree. It totally shows that their voice matters individually too. Co-designing assignments is also really powerful. It really lets students choose how they show their learning. Maybe it might be through a video, a podcast, or a written piece, and it can really spark creativity and ownership.
Oh, for sure. And that flexibility is huge. Offering both live and recorded lessons lets students learn at their own pace, which supports different needs and situations.
That's right. And one last thing, encouraging students to organize their own virtual meetups or activities. So when we let students do this, they create their own spaces, their voices naturally come forward.
Yeah.
Yes, and these may seem like small steps, but together they transform virtual learning. It's not just about teaching, it's about learning with your students too.
Now let's shift to some practical student voice strategies for in-person learning.
One great approach is the I do it, we do it model. It shows students different ways they can share their voice, starting with guided examples and moving towards independence.
You can also co-create a learning space with students, somewhere they can collaborate and engage with lesson content using different formats like visuals, tech, or hands-on materials.
I love using quick polls in my classroom too. It's such a fast way to get feedback on how students feel about the lessons or what they understand in the moment.
Oh, definitely. And I think that another powerful strategy is partnering with the students to explore real world issues. So asking them what community challenges interest them and build assignments that we're talking about around those topics.
Yeah, and finally, involve students in co-leading at least one part of each lesson. So it encourages in collaboration, group processing, and shared decision making, skills that really empower them in the classroom.
For sure. Alrighty, well, thank you, Freedom. So that actually leads us perfectly into what we're focusing on next, which is practical, meaningful ways to support and deepen student voice in the classroom. So we're going to look at how educators can create space for students to express themselves, make choices in their learning, and even take part in shaping the direction of the classroom. So let's get into it.
I think that one of the first and most important things we can do is really build a classroom culture that it just really respects each student's background and experiences. That might mean co-creating classroom norms or taking the time to learn how students want to be addressed and asking their preferences. Like even saying the student's name correctly sends such a powerful message.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as someone with a really long last name, I definitely agree that that's super important. And it makes me feel good when people say it right. And this also reminds me of something else educator Carolyn Roberts shares, which is how meaningful Indigenous inclusion begins with shifting classroom power dynamics and centering relationship building. When we respect the knowledge students carry from their families and communities, especially Indigenous students, we validate their voices and experiences.
Absolutely, Andrea. And once that culture is in place, it's important to model ways for students to share their voice. We can encourage them to express their ideas in a variety of ways, group discussions, one-on-one check-ins, or even anonymous surveys. Different students are comfortable in different formats, so flexibility is really key.
Another way to elevate student voice is by giving them choices during instruction. For example, allow students to select content or activities at least once per lesson. collect feedback in diverse ways, and let students know how that feedback is being used and really use that feedback. That transparency builds trust and shows students that their input really matters.
Yeah, and to build on that, we can use student centered learning strategies like project based learning or place based projects to connect classroom content to students' interests, goals, and communities. We should also make sure that we're designing lessons that consider their access to resources like technology or family support so that everyone has a fair opportunity to engage.
And I think that that connection to students' lives is crucial.
Mhm.
And when we're co-creating lessons with them, we are actually deepening those connections even further. So let them help plan, bring in primary sources that reflect their identities, such as books, music, media, and actually invite them to co-lead parts of a lesson that they're interested in. And this will give them like a sense of ownership of their learning.
Yeah, and what about when things shift? We know that change is unavoidable, whether it's a new unit, a tech update, or a major classroom transition. And that's another moment when student voices are really vital.
Definitely. We need to clearly communicate what's changing and collaborate with students on how to navigate it. That could mean helping them set expectations, brainstorm solutions, or simply making space for their voice and their feelings and questions to be heard.
Yeah, it also helps to check in regularly during the change process, right? Like ask students how they're adapting, what they need, and what's working or not working. And keeping them in the loop ensures that changes feel like something happening with them, not to them.
Yeah, and in some cases, we can go a step further by supporting students in leading a community gathering to talk about changes. It might be a presentation or a family night where students share what's happening in their own words, right? That kind of leadership is empowering and turns transitions into opportunities for growth.
Oh, for sure. And I love the way that we've just closed off this conversation. I feel like from building a foundation of respect to making room for leadership during change, all of these strategies are really going to help us go beyond student participation and move towards true partnership.
We have explored amplifying student voices in the classroom culture. Now let's shift the lens and discuss something that is just as essential: family voices, and incorporate it into our classroom environment.
So true. Families are often a child's very first educator.
Yeah, exactly. They help guide their children in their educational journey in ways that reflect their culture, values, and community.
So, how do we as educators bring those diverse family perspectives into our teaching practice?
Good question, Andrea. It starts with building a classroom culture that doesn't just acknowledge cultural diversity, but respects and celebrates it. One of the best way to partners with family can look like hosting a community gathering, especially when there's going to be a shift in their child's education, such as kindergarten or orientation or Great Beginnings. Introducing curriculum or cultural program that celebrates culture and co-creates experiences. Designing lessons designing lessons that encompass students' lived experiences, backgrounds, and using parents as resources to make their lessons more authentic. Communication with families in their first language, whenever it's possible, using technology or even with assistance from community members.
I love that, Christine. It's about making that connection and having that engagement with family, and it's more than just sending home a newsletter.
Absolutely. And when we make space for families to contribute to the classroom environment, the student feels seen.
I've been gifted some delicious homemade meals by families in my diverse community. And some of the kids in my class have even taught me how to say mom and dad in their home language, and that's really cool. But how can we foster this in an online environment?
Great point, Andrea. This isn't just for in-person learning. In virtual spaces, families can join lessons, sharing strategies that work at home, or attend virtual meetups with teachers. During the pandemic, I hosted family events such as collaborative art lessons with my online classes. Educators can set up weekly office hours so families can check in on their child's progress. That ensures the partnership stays strong no matter what format.
So important. And whether online or in person, building those relationships with family is key to creating an inclusive, supportive, and culturally responsive classroom.
100%. And when we make space for family voices, we're not just inviting feedback, we're building relationships that really shape student success. Now, let's dig into the family voice strategies you can use as a teacher candidate or even a seasoned teacher. Okay, team. So as we continue our conversation about family voice, let's take this a step further. We've started to explore how these everyday interactions shape our relationships with families. And now we're going to look more closely at what this really means in practice. These seemingly small actions aren't just good intentions, they're powerful ways to build trust, show respect, and to really create those lasting partnerships. So, whether you're preparing for your first practicum or drafting a unit plan, these are the kinds of strategies that help you connect with families in really meaningful and authentic ways, which is so important. So, let's refill our coffees and let's keep going.
Okay, so why don't we start with something simple like communication? One of the easiest ways to build trust with families, yeah, just ask them how they would prefer to stay in touch. Do
Makes sense.
they check email? Would they rather get a text or a phone call? Taking that time to ask and then following through says, I respect your time and your role in your child's learning. And let's not just reach out when there's a problem either. Like, we should be sharing the wins. If a student had a great day, they showed kindness or they rocked a project, tell
Yes.
the grown-ups.
Hmm.
Like, those little celebrations can go a long way.
That is super important for sure. And while we're on the topic of communication, there's something important to highlight, which is language access. So if you check out the infographic, and we will link that in the show notes, it's a powerful reminder that families deserve to receive information in their preferred language. That means we, as educators, even student teachers, need to advocate for interpreters and translation tools. One thing to remember, students should never have to translate for the school. My husband had to do that and he hated it. That's a lot of pressure on them and it's not fair. And it's our responsibility to make sure families feel included and truly understood.
Mhm.
And you know what else matters? Bringing family culture and knowledge into your lessons. Let's say you're doing a unit on storytelling, measurements, or seasonal change. Why not ask families how those themes show up in their lives? You might even invite a family member to share a story, teach a recipe, or demonstrate a tradition. And that's just not good teaching, it's a statement. Your experience belongs here, and that's very powerful.
Of course. And when it comes to relationship building, let's not forget logistics. When scheduling conference meetings, offer multiple time slots. Think about parent work shifts, childcare needs, transportation barriers. Sometimes a short virtual meeting can make all the difference. And we really need to be clear and let families know the why of the meeting, what we'll be discussing, what they want to talk about. When we create space for dialogue, those meetings feel more like a partnership instead of checklists.
Yeah, those are all really great points, guys. So let's just give a quick recap for our listeners. So let's ask families their communication preferences and follow through with that. Share the good stuff, not just the concerns. It's so important to share that with families. Make language access a priority. Weave family culture into your lessons. And be flexible and respectful with meeting times and agendas. These aren't just nice to haves. They're meaningful steps towards building inclusive, equitable classrooms. And the best part? You don't need years of experience to get started. Just curiosity, consistency, and a mindset of collaboration.
So, as you step into your role as a teacher candidate or even a teacher who wants to modernize and enhance their practice, remember that connecting with families isn't an extra, it's a foundation for student success. When we truly listen, learn from, and collaborate with families, we create learning spaces where every student feels seen, valued, and empowered to thrive. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Keep showing up, keep listening, and keep learning. You're building more than just lessons, you're building relationships that matter. We've got more practical strategies coming up. Until then, keep your hearts open, your coffee warm, and remember, families are our partners, not our audience.
Bye.
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 See you next time.